Alright, so today I'm going to do a build description and a gameplay showcase for something I call the Super Support. Now, it's geared towards supporting a team of people who are geared towards different, levels of gameplay and styles of gameplay. You definitely want to be using this to augment an existing DPS dealer or something like that, but it also functions, from a solo play perspective as well. So you're going to be using 4-piece Tactician. Now this is a very common build, this is a very common gear set, a lot of people are already using this, but it has a lot of benefits, hidden benefits, when paired with the right guns and the right, other gear sets. So I'm going to start off, the way I'm using this in the underground during my gameplay showcase is to run it with the ammo support station, the ammo cache support mod, and also run 2-piece reclaimer. So now there's a lot of things that go into this build. I'm going to talk about the gear first, the guns, then my skills and talents, etc. But I'm also going to talk about, how everything pairs together at the end. So 4-piece Tactician is, again, something that's very common. I'm going to talk about my chest piece really quickly. I have armor on a chest piece. Very important to roll armor on your chest piece and your holster. That's critical. And then maybe one other piece if you don't have great roll. So I got a great roll here. Really nice stamina roll. Protection from elites, which is nice. I would prefer exotic damage resilience, but I can only reroll one thing, and I chose to reroll the armor, which is more important. And then, increased kill XP, smart cover, damage resilience. That's nice, but not, it doesn't actually help the damage output of the build at all. So I'm ticking off all the Tactician bonuses. So 4,000 skill power, 20% skill haste, and then the 4-piece, every 60,000 damage your group deals adds 1% power to you for a max of 100% bonus. Bonus is reduced by 1% every second the group isn't dealing damage. So that means that you actually have well over a minute of having, increased skill power, and basically, 40 seconds of having, like, extremely increased skill power if you do get up to, max 100%. Now, one of the things about this is that the 60,000 damage, if you actually go full Tactician and you have all stamina and all electronics and you have super high skill power, it's very hard for you from a solo play perspective to stack this. It's actually extremely difficult, and it'll take you a very long time. With this build, using an M1A, you can actually stack this very, very quickly. You're still going to be doing good damage, especially when you pop your signature and things like that. And it does rely on the signature skill, Tactical Link. And you have 40,000 skill power, so when you are getting this up to nearly 100%, you're going to be up at 80,000 skill power. So it's a really effective build overall. The mods I'm using are basically all firearms with skill power. I'm not going to go over each individual piece with the mods because pretty much every single one is firearms with skill power, so that I can remain competitive from the damage side of things with 2,400 firearms. That's enough to tick off all of my gun talents. I don't actually have brutal on either of my guns, and even if I did, actually, one of them's a 204, so I would be able to still activate it there. But then, on a 229 version that requires 2,800 firearms, I wouldn't be able to activate it. So it does, edge away from firearms to a certain degree, and does rely on skill power and your skills to be supporting your team and dealing damage, but you are still competitive from a damage standpoint, so that's why it may appeal to a lot of people. So talking about my backpack, it is very important to roll skill power. This is, you can't change this. It's integral to the build. You definitely want a good, stamina backpack with skill power. Disrupt resistance isn't critical. Sticky bomb damage is nice if you are going to run, typical Tactician. I do not do that, and I'm not trying to encourage anyone to do that, but this build, if you do want to play PvP and have offensive capabilities, it does work as a Tactician with a maxed out sticky bomb. You can draw people in one shot quite easily. So sticky bomb damage does help with that, but turret duration isn't critical at all. And then moving on to my mask, it's important to roll skill power on this as well. It's one of the ways that you achieve, paired with the 2-piece tac bonus of 4,000, the mask for almost 5,000 here, and the backpack for well over 6,000. All those pair together nicely with one electronics piece to give you upwards of 40,000 skill power. Now, support station healing speed, I don't actually need. I would meet the healing speed cap, and I'll talk about skill caps in a second here, without this. So that's actually a dead stat for me. I would much prefer something like First Aid Ally Heal, because that is actually one of the ways that you can increase the healing done to your allies beyond what the caps are. I think that's still in effect. If that's been patched, let me know, but that was a way previously where you could actually avoid the caps and still, get more healing off. Moving on to my gloves, I have Tactician's Authority gloves. Now, typically, most people are running firearms gloves. I'm running electronics gloves. You could switch this up if you wanted to, if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of skill power. It's not really a big deal. You'll probably still meet all the caps on your skills, and then you would actually be able to activate the 229 versions of Brutal and Deadly and things like that. So your guns would become more competitive. Now, these have sticky bomb damage as well, which is nice, but, they're not really perfectly set up. They don't have critical hit damage. That would be very important to have if you're trying to use this, cross environment and use it in PvP and PvE. I do use this build in both, but mostly it's a PvE build for me right now until it's fully min-maxed. Has marksman rifle damage. That's important for keeping your, your base damage on your marksman rifle high. Anything in the base damage category is going to increase how the critical strikes scale on top of that. So it's really nice to have that. And then damage to elites, if you are looking for, you know, cross PvP and PvE, would be critical, you know, damage. But damage to elites functions well and is actually more valuable than critical hit damage from a PvE standpoint specifically. So that's my 4-piece tack, and that's pretty straightforward. A lot of people are running, you know, tactician. So that's not really anything innovative about the build, but, you know, it functions quite well. And then talking about the reclaimer, I have a really well-rolled reclaimer holster as sticky bomb damage. Again, if I were to opt for some offensive bomb capabilities, this would be very nice for that. I personally don't. I run with pulse or support station, but you know, people may choose to do this. So this build does function from a tanktician, not even a tanktician, but from a, you know, like a Nukem style of gameplay. Has good rolls all around, really low on the stamina actually, and actually really low on the electronics as well. I would prefer those in the 700 range, but it'll get the job done, and the firearms roll is quite nice, so not so bad there. And then I have a really nice set of pads here that have armor rolled. This is allowing me to not devote any mods whatsoever to armor. I can actually achieve the armor cap easily without rolling that. Now this could be switched. I actually would prefer to switch this armor roll for critical hit damage. That would help the build quite a bit. And I would actually be freed up. I would use one mod of armor, which isn't really a big deal, but it would make a difference in terms of the damage output of your M1A. Enemy armor damage, I think, is a minor attribute that needs to be prioritized now, considering that they're, you know, thinking about adding armor shred and armor penetration to PvP. If they do that, you're going to want a minor attribute of enemy armor damage on pretty much every single piece of gear that you can possibly get it on. So I'm already starting to build for that, and I think that other people should, you know, look forward to that patch as well and begin to think about it. This is a really nice stamina roll, and just like all my other mods, you know, it's a stamina with skill power. Mostly firearms with skill power, but this is the one I believe that's stamina with skill power to get that 41,000. So that's my reclaimer, and then the guns are one of the more interesting, you know, parts of this build. The SASG-12 I have has Deadly, Vicious, and Determined. This is what I'll primarily be using in PvP if I do take this build into the Dark Zone. Now what this means is that I get a kill and I reduce my skill cooldowns by 9.5%, which is nice on NPCs in the Dark Zone for sure. It's going to help me get back my heal and my support station, or my pulse, or my smart cover even, because smart cover functions the same way that support station does with this build very quickly. So I like this a lot. And then my first two talents are geared towards overall DPS, which helps me kill players or NPCs much quicker. Then the more interesting of the two is the M1A that I have. Now this is what the build focuses around, especially for PvE. It has accurate, deadly, and cool-headed. The reason I don't have deadly and brutal is because specifically that I can't achieve the firearms to unlock brutal. If someone were to switch their gloves to a firearms, you know, version of the gloves, you would be able to do that, and you could have deadly, brutal, and cool-headed instead, and your DPS would go up dramatically. Now, cool-headed is the most critical component of this because in the third slot, I don't need the electronics requirement to unlock it, and every time I hit a headshot with my M1A, I'm going to be reducing my skill cooldowns, which are already at, you know, the lowest possible duration that they can be. Now, there is some data mined information about all the different skills and what all of the different cooldown caps are, so you can't go below that, and I've actually achieved all of the different caps on the skills, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So cool-headed helps a lot. I pop my heal, I can shoot 3 or 4 shots, and then I'm almost completely recharged on my heal. It works across my entire build and functions very nicely. So that has good base damage as well, and that's what I'm going to be using to clear all of the PvE content. So moving on from there, I'm going to talk about my abilities. I am always going to be using in PvE the ammo cache support station. As you can see here, I'm capped out at 5,000 HP per second for the healing rate. That is the hard cap. It can't go above that. And then the cooldown is capped out at 38 seconds, so that can't go below that again. So there's a lot of different things with the skills where there's hard caps or, you know, lower limits where you can't go above or below them, and those are important to know about. I'm going to actually link in the description to a list of all the different skills and all the different data mined information points about where they can go and can't go in terms of cooldown, amount that they can do, duration, all that different stuff. So then I also have my heal with the overdose. Now this heals for a massive amount. For my allies and myself, it's both 78,000. That's a huge amount. That means full overheal for pretty much anyone, and, you know, a massive chunk of health if they are close to dying, right back up to full health and probably into the overheal a little bit, especially when paired with other things like, you know, canned food from a reclaimer. There are a lot of different things that pair very nicely with this build. So that's why I'm running those two skills, and this is kind of a dedicated support healing build that still has damage, so that's why I'm running these. You can switch over to something like, you know, Sticky Bomb. As you can see here, if I were to scroll over these, I have a maxed out BFB at 250,000. All it would take is just a few percentage points of the increase in TAC to get well up over 50,000 skill power, 60,000 skill power. And then I would also have a maxed out proximity fuse sticky bomb as well. So for anyone wondering, there is a very big difference between BFB and proximity fuse. If you can possibly max out proximity fuse, you want to use that over BFB every time. Now, one of the reasons is the cooldown. Look here, I have 29.6 seconds on my cooldown for BFB, and I have 21.1 seconds on my cooldown for proximity fuse. That means more sticky bombs in a shorter amount of time and more damage overall. And then another thing you got to look at is the explosion radius, 4.5 meters versus 6.25 meters. That's a huge increase. So proximity fuse is a much better sticky bomb to be using if you can cap it out. I'm not encouraging people to use sticky bomb builds, but if you do want to, this build functions to do that. There's a lot of other things you could run, but these are what I find to be optimal, and I always run this with Tactical Link because when you kill a target with Tactical Link, you are going to extend the duration. When you kill a target with a headshot, you're going to recharge a portion of your Tactical Link signature, and when you're killing a target with your M1A constantly with headshots, that's all you're going to be aiming for. It's going to pair very nicely and let you pop this like in underground missions and in the dark zone much more frequently. So that's why I'm always using this, and I would recommend some people in your squad run Survivor Link, but I definitely don't think that anyone should be one-dimensional. If all 4 of your squad are running Survivor Link, you're doing something wrong, and you should probably switch up at least 1 to Tactical Link, maybe even 1 to Recovery Link, but it's up to you guys. I would just definitely encourage someone at least on the team to have Tactical Link so that you have versatility and variety in your different situations in the things you can use. So for talents, I'm going to be running Triage, which is super nice. This pairs very nicely with Cool-Headed. I wasn't able to activate Cool-Headed on my pistol. I did want it there, active as well, but I wasn't able to get the electronics. So on my M1A, it'll have to be my primary, and it'll have to do there. Triage pairs nicely with that, so just cooldown reduction from a whole bunch of different sources means constant heals, constant support station, or a constant pulse, or constant smart cover. And like I said, the same way that I'm going to be using my support station in the gameplay showcase is the same way that you can use smart cover. This build is very quick to reposition. You're going to be repositioning basically whenever you want to. You can just detonate your existing skill and then put it in a new location. So that's why the cooldown reduction is very important and pairs very nicely. I'm also going to be using critical save. This does proc with all healing. I've confirmed that now. There were a lot of people that told me about that, so thank you. This will work with your ammo support station when it heals your allied agents when they're very close to dying. They will get the 40% damage resistance. So if they get low and they're in your support station, that means constantly a buff of 40% damage mitigation, and that will be active for as long as they are at low health, and then for 10 seconds after they get higher. And at 5,000 per second, it means a few ticks of activating this before it goes above 1 bar, and then once it's above 1 bar, there's 10 extra seconds where this is active. So that's an extremely potent talent to pair with support stations. Strike Back, that's just another way of reducing skill cooldowns. Again, you're going to have your positional abilities up almost 100% of the time. Right after you place it, it's going to be back within a matter of seconds, and you'll be able to move if you need to. This is actually valuable for PvP as well, because you're going to reach low health quite often, and if you constantly are getting back your heal skill during PvP, that means you can reposition, put your support station down somewhere else, put your smart cover down somewhere else, all these different ways, and it's very valuable. Then One is None. Since I will be aiming for the head 100% of the time, One is None is very helpful, especially since I'm proccing Cool-Headed. I'm also not consuming a bullet perhaps, and overall it's just really valuable and pairs very nicely with the build. Now I'm going to go over and talk about my character sheet real quick. With my M1A, the most important thing is the headshot damage, so that's clear. And then everything else in the character sheet, I'm just going to scroll through really quickly. People can pause it if they want to see any specific attribute that I have, but nothing really interesting here. The enemy armor damage does help in a PvE scenario, but it's not exactly critical. So I'm going to throw it over to some gameplay and then talk during it about what's going on and why I'm doing the things I'm doing. Okay, so here we are, and we're doing a heroic with no modifiers. Just we're on the second phase already. I'm going to keep the gameplay, not short, but, not 30, 40 minutes of us, tanking through the first phase. We had I think it was critical infrastructure or something. It took a long time in the first phase, but the second phase went quite well and was a good showcase. So as you can see, I'm popping my signature, my Tactical Link, and I'm doing tons of damage. One of the things to note about Tactical Link is that you extend the duration whenever you get a kill. So every time I'm getting a kill, I'm keeping this active for longer periods of time. And despite the fact that I am the support and I am dropping healing skills at all times, I do, massive damage, and it's really, I'm really helpful to my team. Now, this would be ideally paired with someone that has 4-piece Sentry. A triple mark target that I would normally, activate my signature and deal 1 million damage to, I would deal upwards of 1.5 million damage to, and as a result, I would be dropping them much faster, extending the duration more. There's ideal squad compositions that pair very nicely with this build, but I understand that most people don't have, the perfect squad with everyone having multiple builds and all that different stuff, so it does function by itself. When you are popping your signature to get those kills, you do have, high DPS. You do have great survivability. You can self-revive on your support station if you want to do that. You can pop a massive heal that gives you a great overshield fairly frequently, and you're just going to decrease your cooldowns with both of the guns that I have in this instance. Someone may have even better versions of the guns that I carry and get more utility out of the build overall. So with the capped out, cooldowns and healing amounts, the support station is going to be really valuable. So I'm going to drop it everywhere that we go, and I'm actually going to get it super quickly. I'll try and find an instance in a couple seconds here to demonstrate. So when I put down the support station, here we are. And every time I'm getting a headshot, it's recharging. Now, I just placed the support station, and as you can see, I've actually got it back now. I actually have it fully recharged. It's not even half over in the duration from when I initially placed it. And now I have the option to detonate that and move to wherever I want, whenever I want, without worrying about the cooldowns. I've found that I never have an instance when using this build where I'm saying, okay, well, let's wait because I can't put my support station down. Whenever someone says, like, this could work with an immunizer as well. I use ammo support, cache, because what it does is it decreases cooldowns, again, for you and your teammates. But if you are using immunizer or something in an incursion, in the dark zone, and someone, oftentimes the person that's running immunizer, you may get tired of hearing this, and I know I do, where's that immunizer? Where's that immunizer? I need that immunizer. Place that immunizer. I hate that. So with this build, you're never going to hear that because you can put it down whenever you want, wherever you want, and, it's just never going to be something that comes up. So that's a really nice aspect to it as well. And like I said before, it functions the same way with Smart Cover. Since you have this super high skill power, as you can see, a maxed out Tactician bonus right now, which means 80,000 skill power, I could do the same thing I'm doing with my support station with Smart Cover, which means placing it wherever I want to, basically whenever I want to, and then keeping it active for basically as long as I want to. Whenever it goes down, I can just tag it right back or move and tag it somewhere else, and it will be maxed out. So you can move freely throughout the battlefield while still placing it down, and it's really valuable. I did actually have a different version of this build where I had skill haste on a lot of different mods, and I realized after I had done that it did cap out and I was using performance mods that I didn't need to. And that's what led to this version of the build where I still had relevant gun DPS, which is really fun. I did find that this is much better geared towards PvE unless you are using an offensive sticky bomb, in which case it's functional in the dark zone for sure. A lot of people aren't running Final Measure anymore, and while I do consider it in every build that I have, I don't often run it. So I am one of the people that if someone is running a maxed out sticky bomb, they probably will be able to kill me. Now, this build in particular, as you can see, I just popped my signature again. That just shows how fast I get it back, how many times I can extend the duration. I do plenty of good damage when it's, when it's active, even when it's not, to be relevant and to help my team. Another thing about this build is that if you are going to be in the dark zone, if you are going to be using an offensive sticky bomb or a pulse or something like that, then you can swap out the 2-piece reclaimer for 2-piece final measure. If you're going for chain reaction and a sticky bomb build and you need to proc it on yourself to get that extra 40% damage, you're going to want to go with 2-piece final measure and swap out the reclaimer. If you're not using a support station, you definitely don't want to have the reclaimer. You want a different 2-piece bonus. If you definitely will be using pulse all the time, I would actually recommend something like 2-piece blind. Maybe even 2-piece Hunter's Faith to pair with your marksman rifle, or 2-piece Sentry even for 10% increased headshot damage. There's a lot of different options. The 4-piece tac is what's integral to the build, and the hybrid aspect of keeping track of your firearms and not just devoting everything to stamina and electronics, because that's the typical Tactician, and I think that's just a one-dimensional, cookie-cutter, bland, disgusting style of gameplay. If you have the ability to get weapon DPS relevant, I would definitely do so. It just increases the versatility of the build overall, and in my opinion, increases the fun. But some people may differ. I'm trying not to rag on Tacticians too much, but at the same time, keeping a hybrid aspect of the build alive is something I definitely want to always do. We didn't have very good luck with these chests at all, as you can see there. But it was a successful mission, and I actually will pop my signature for a 3rd time during this single phase coming up when we fight the boss. So that's just another demonstration of how often you can pop your damage ultimate get that, increase, get that relevant damage. And with a sentry on your team, if you are lucky enough to have a well-coordinated group with different builds, you're going to see much, like drastically increased effectiveness with this build. So as you can see, one of my teammates is putting smart cover there, and I actually can recharge my support station very quickly. I just placed it up here, and then I realized, oops, I placed it in the wrong location. So I shot the shotgunner that was coming up the stairs, instantly recharged my skill, and then came down here to put it where it's relevant and where it's needed. That ability to reposition on the fly is something I'm gaining a greater and greater appreciation for, because it's just something that helps so much. That's going to be about it. Let's see. There's not much else to really say about the build. I do pop my signature again, and that's, going to be the end of it. I didn't really get any good drops from the underground, but it was a really good showcase of what the build can do. I don't have any PvP for you today with this build, but again, just to harp on it a little bit more, using a sticky bomb works very well. Proximity fuse in particular, if you're going to go for that, offensive nuke style of gameplay. Using a pulse is going to augment really well with your team and their damage. A maxed out pulse is just going to absolutely shred other players. If you can land a headshot critical strike while in smart cover or with a maxed out pulse with an M1A, despite the fact that you may not have a dedicated sniper build, it's still going to do just a heck of a lot of damage. So that's going to be about it. Thank you everyone for watching. Check out the links in the description. I'm not going to go over what all of them are, but the Facebook community is really great. And then there's a few other links as well to support the channel or get involved with the community. We're looking forward to live streaming more in the future. Thanks everyone for watching, and as always, have a nice day.